Oh yeah, what a weekend of sport. The officially best weekend of the year has already happened. There's not going to be a weekend as good as this until obviously Paddy's weekend when we win the Grand Slam. A very good morning to you out there. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl. We're going to talk about the dramatic end to the Spurs Liverpool game, and obviously we're going to talk about the dramatic end to the Six Nations game. A very special Monday morning. Welcome to Brian O'Driscoll as well. How are you doing?
Yeah, great. What?
You came in your shorts.
Yeah, well, I'm training at 9. I always train at 9 on a Monday, and we're off air at like 8:30. We'll shoot to the gym.
Very good.
Get it done. Nothing different, except we're going to chat through a reasonable weekend of sport.
Yeah, it was ridiculous, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was class. Absolutely class. It was rare. I got to watch. It's the one game that I wasn't doing any TV for, so I got to watch it at home, and yeah. It's funny how it wasn't a particularly good game, but how the last 2.5 minutes of a game can completely change the outlook of the whole country, of
the entire season.
And the whole season.
Yeah,
like it impact. That's how big an impact it was, and we'll look back in time to see how monumental that moment was. Fingers crossed. We'll be looking back favourably. But listen, a long way still to go. But that was a big hurdle. And to do it in the fashion that they did it at the end is like that inspires confidence for the rest of the tournament as well. Whatever about when you're off colour and then it's going against you, and then you're still able to dig it out and have 41 Faheys and knock a field goal over from 42 metres is class. The
celebrations as well. Conor Murray was like, "Oh, I'm sure we'll get given out to for the soccer style celebrations." I don't think anybody's going to give out to them. It was like delighted. It
was also like it was pretty contained from Johnny. You know, as you'd imagine. You know, I was texting him afterwards, and he said he actually went running to the big screen to try and get a better sense of it. I knew immediately when it's 42-metre drop goal, you don't know. So he hit it, and he looked as though he hit it pretty plush. Yeah. So I stopped looking at that, and I looked straight at him, because they're the ones that know. You know if it's come sweetly off your foot. Yeah. If it's online, and I saw immediately him getting excited. I said, "This has a chance," and then just continued watching him, and then just at the end looked to the ball dropping over the post.
I wasn't sure it had actually gone over for ages.
I was pretty sure, but not 100%.
No, because they didn't show a replay, and there was silence.
And no one really. It was like,
and he stopped celebrating.
Yeah.
It was like because he's looking at the big screen, and the big screen is showing him instead of actually showing the ball going over. I'm like, what happened? But we won.
I think there was just that weird moment where Johnny Sexton realised what he had just done. He kind of looked around, and you have these strange moments in life where he's like, this is amazing. This moment that I'm experiencing right now is one of the highlights of my entire life. And I think that must have just hit him there. He had this spiritual nirvana moment almost.
The thing too as well, it's those moments that he literally lives for. He wants as much pressure, and he wants the onus to be put on him. In that regard, he's very Johnny Wilkinson-esque, and Rog as well. To I suppose categorize all three of them together. They want to be able to excel in the most horrific of pressurized situations. That's their game. That's why they've done all that practice, and lots of players will shy away from that ultimately, and you've seen it different times. I think a really good example of it was Wales in 2011 World Cup against France. They gave themselves an opportunity to have a drop goal, and they never pulled the trigger. I think what you have to do is, if you get yourself within hunting distance of an opportunity, you've got to fire one shot. It mightn't be the best shot. If he scuffed that, or it doesn't make it to the 22, at least he's had a go. Yeah. But there's nothing worse than if they played another 5 phases, and on that 5th phase, just when they thought they were teeing themselves up, someone dropped the ball, because they were playing for 3.5 minutes as well. Yeah. They were exhausted. So you have to be able to give yourself a chance, an outside chance, which it was, of firing that shot.
It emerged, I was just reading the papers today, that Joey Carby had been warmed up. Sexton had been stretching his leg. The physio had been out to have a word with him, and he was like, no, I'm okay, I'm going to stick it out. So, I mean, there was a bunch of reasons why it might not have happened. Primarily when they're throwing it back to him, I'm thinking, he's miles out here. And in my head is the first half drop goal, which he took when we had a penalty advantage, which wasn't really close. Like, I mean, it would never look like it was going over at all. Like, he's not renowned for kicking 48, 42.
Heineken Cup final in 2009, he knocked one over from the touchline. Now, that's a shot to nothing. That's not the same. You know, he's caught it on the touchline nearly 40 metres out, and everyone's going, what are you doing? And he just hit it so flush.
Were you guys going, what are you doing when you kicked
I did it yesterday or on Saturday? Yeah, I did. I was like, you're mad. You've got to get closer. And in fairness, there were so many different aspects to it, because you get a better sense of how your packers, might be struggling, how they're literally running on fumes.
Yeah.
They'd done brilliantly. I thought it was incredibly brave to go to that crossfield kick to Earls, because they weren't getting there with ball in hand. They had to do something slightly different, and it was a calculated risk. A silly risk would have been a chip over the top, whereas a kick pass to Earlsy on the touchline coming in aggressively the way he did, I thought was so brave, but it was totally necessary to make. That must have made almost 25 yards, whereas you could play another 15 phases and not get that. Yeah. So they had to change the impetus in some way to also give the forwards a little bit of a break. You have to remember, they're just going around the corner, getting up on their feet and working hard. And in those instances, we've talked before, the worst thing to do is to zigzag, where the defenders just make a tackle, get up, and that's where the next passage of play comes at you as well. You've got to work them around the corner to tire them as well as you. So for them to go to Earls and then the brilliant carries from CJ and Henderson actually got about 2 or 3 yards that gave you a glimmer of hope that we're not far away now. Yeah. And then he had a go. I was like, that's too far. I thought that is too far out. There's no way. I don't think he'll ever hit a sweeter drop goal. But you got the sense too that it looked so flush when it came off. And then, I don't know whether there was a bit of a headwind, but it's definitely held up. Yeah. And it still crossed with, probably there was a couple of yards in it. Yeah. It didn't drop directly over the crossbar. Yeah. There was a couple of yards. So when you saw it from behind the post, it dropped a bit into the in-goal area. So he still, I wouldn't say he might have had another yard in it, maybe another yard and a half, but the whole thing was incredible, from going back to the restart, the 22, reclaiming that. I think they'll take a lot of satisfaction in that, in being able to get that done. Yeah, because this is the thing great teams used to do to us, and now we're doing it to other teams. Yeah, yeah. I think I don't know how long the whole sequence of play was exactly, but it must have been,
I think, around 6 minutes. Was it 77 to 83?
That is actually mind-blowing. Yeah. To hold the ball for that long. That is incredible, because going back to that really heartbreaking moment in 2013 against the All Blacks, and they held it for 3 minutes 10 seconds. That was then the target for us to be able to deal with a pressurised situation of defending in that time. So to have to defend for 6 minutes 10 is pretty unthinkable. Yeah. And they did a brilliant job of it. Sensational. But listen, Nigel absolutely could have given a couple of penalties too. Vahamina, just wasn't listening to him, and Turia as well when he was on the pitch. But there was a sense that Nigel was never ever giving a rolling away penalty. He was going to get in there and ruck the ball out himself if he had to, to make sure that we were going to get an open, honest victory one way or another. Yeah. I mean, is it honest that they're lying on the ball? It's not. But from his perspective, he doesn't want. He doesn't want. Having said that, he did it against us. He was the one that blew against us in the All Black game. Yeah. I have to say, I don't disagree with his call in that. I think we did flop in and we were trying to seal off. So I'm not. It's not sour grapes from that, because I think he got that one right. I think he could have been. The perception changes a little bit when the clock goes red, and you don't want to be seen to be the bad guy, or particularly, when the away teams on the attack, you want to give the players every opportunity to roll away, and I think he certainly did that.
Speaking euphemistically, I mean, the same thing happened in the Super Bowl. Actually, there was loads of pass interference in the final plays that wasn't called as well. We will talk about that a little bit later on, just to run you through what's coming up. Mike Carlson and Cian Fahey are going to talk to us about the Super Bowl around about 8:30. If you didn't stay up, you might want to know that the Philadelphia Eagles have won the Super Bowl for the very first time. Check out the scenes from Broad Street at the moment. They greased the lamppoles there to try and protect them, and apparently it's not working. Apparently the Philadelphians are still managing to shimmy up them. As well as that, we're going to bring you some Kevin Kilbane reaction from the 2-2 draw. They had the game live on News Talk yesterday. And the Super Bowl highlights, if you want to see them, are up on offtheball.com. We'll run you through the newspapers and then we'll get Brian's thoughts on the actual what happened in the game. But as ever, if you want to leave a comment, you can get through to us here at Off The Ball on Twitter, or at Off The Ball AM as well on that one. So I might open the comments doc here so I can actually read what you're sending in to us.
In the meantime, I may as well go through some of the back page stories. On the back of the Irish Daily Star, they're leading with, as you mentioned, Spurs against Liverpool yesterday. Dirty Harry reads the headline. Van Dijk accuses Kane of penalty dive. It was a controversial conclusion to the 2-2 draw there in yesterday's Premier League game. Red Rage reads the headline, meanwhile, on the Herald. If I say what I think, I would pay the biggest fine in world football, says angry Klopp. Not angry at all. No passive aggressiveness whatsoever from Jurgen Klopp. Diver Kane reads the back of the Mirror. Sick Van Dijk blasts top up Harry, and Lamella over Spurs' 2 late penalties. So angry stuff, sour grapes, one might say, from the Liverpool camp, Van Dijk and Klopp. And then the final Liverpool lead this morning is on the back page of the Sun. Klopp strop. Reds boss slams ref Moss as cop clash boils over.
So all the Irish newspapers leading with the rugby. Schmidt relieved as Ireland get off to a winning start. Nerveless Sexton steals the show with Moment of Magic is the lead story on the Irish Times. And also there's that Roy Best explains the reason for attending trial. We put that video up of the post-match press conference on Off The Ball on Twitter over the weekend. On Saturday night, actually, we will have there. Grand Designs, France omen has Schmidt's sights on title. Joe Schmidt is hoping Ireland's trialist win over France is an omen that a repeat of their last Six Nations title win in 2015 could now be on the cards this spring. So suddenly we're staring down the barrel of 3 matches at home, which, you know, we've got a good home record. Sexton's drop of magic, papers over cracks. This is the Indo have decided that they're going to remind us that actually the stuff that happened before that wasn't so good. The optimists and pessimists might both be right. We'll deal with that in a couple of minutes' time. And then this is the back of the Times Ireland edition. Campaign to remove Best as captain. This is the hashtag that you might have seen on social media. Not my captain. The Times Ireland edition are talking about that one there. So that's pretty much the headlines from the newspapers. We should get into the actual analysis of the game. Which? Owen's got a couple more, sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry, we may as well show you the back page of the Irish News this morning. I think they're leading with GAA on this Monday morning. We can bring you the back page of the sports section there now. Yeah, down on their luck. Fortuitous goal gives Cork deserved victory. That's Kenny Archer's story there. You've also got a couple of other rugby leads in the Daily Telegraph. We may as well show you that because it's definitely worth showing. You've got Sam Simmons, an unbelievable. It was the Six Nations debut yesterday, and 2 tries, an unbelievable performance. I think most people would know who he is, but certainly after yesterday's performance, everybody knows who he is after that.
Thanks, Tom. I was like, I need to know a bit more about this off air, but thanks for outing me there. He's talking about me. Let's bring you some Conor Murray speaking after the match. He's talking to Ocean here. Have a look.
Look at all that stuff tomorrow evening and Monday and look to repair a few things, but I think, you know, that last however many minutes, however many phases, I don't know the stats yet, but to grind it out like that, to go for the 22 with Hendy claiming that, then Earlsey claiming a cross kick, and then to keep the phases together and keep building pressure and keep getting a bit of go forward and to eventually pull the trigger, and Johnny does his bit of magic. They're the moments, you know, like if you take it on its own, they're the moments you want to play sport for, that kind of feeling when you get a win like that, you snatch a win like that. You know, so there's a good feeling in the dressing room at the moment, and we'll enjoy it. And you know, we do have a bit of work, a few things to repair, and we get better next week.
Creatively, you didn't do a whole pile today, even though it was a spectacular finish and that will never be forgotten. Do you know why that was at this stage? Is that something you'd be disappointed with?
Yeah, to be honest, a little bit. I think the conditions played into that, and you know, the way the game ebbed and flowed. There was a lot of kickable penalties that we took. You know, usually in a different situation, you'd probably go down the line and look to attack them a little bit more, and then go back to my first point about the weather and the slippery ball and the breakdown especially. They put a lot of pressure on our break. I think we're a really good side. You know, when we get in the front foot, like any good side is, but I think they targeted our breakdown and they did quite a good job in it. You know, they were probably a little bit ill-disciplined in that area, which stopped us getting a bit of momentum and getting into our attacking game and our phase game, which will be a little bit frustrating, but that's probably one area that we'll look to build on. But that being said, you know, we got a lot of penalties out of that, and we were probably a little bit frustrated that we couldn't get quicker ball at times, and that's something that we'll look at.
Yeah, so pretty interesting stuff. And like, I mean, obviously, the amazing highlight is something that will last all week, and that's going to be helpful. But also, there's going to be a lot of analysis of why they weren't able to put their game together and why they didn't play for territory. And some of the, like, imagine the kick doesn't go over. The analysis is like, what the hell happened to this team? We're supposed to win that game by 10 points. So why didn't we dominate the game the way a team with our talent and possession in that game should have?
I think there was a few things. I think the conditions obviously played a big part in it. You heard the players afterwards and Joe afterwards talking about how greasy the ball was and how difficult handling was. So I think sometimes it can be a frustration as a player when it doesn't look that greasy out on the pitch, and yet it can be a bar of soap.
Yeah,
you almost feel like you want to wave a sign up to the fans beforehand, going, "This is really tricky out here." Just expect some unforced errors. So maybe their skill set, particularly that last sequence of play to hold on to the ball through that many phases, is shows a phenomenal amount of skill. I think they probably should have realised that and cut their cloth a small bit. I don't know. They want to be seen as a team that has really good multi-phase, has really good launch play. They're known for good kick contests, but I thought they got an awful lot of success from that in the first half an hour, 40 minutes. France's backfield wasn't particularly effective. They caught very few clean balls. I don't know why they didn't go to that a little bit more. When it's not going for you, when the conditions are difficult, you've got to break away from how you thought, how you trained during the week, and sometimes have that adaptability to try and eke out more of those 50-50s, play a little bit more territory. Even their exit plays are so good now, where off a scrum or a line out, they'll break into midfield, they'll go again, and Johnny will put a Gary Owen up on the halfway line, a calculated one where enough distance to get you out of your 22, but also the opportunity of getting it back. And I think they continued to have good success. You've got people like Keith Earls and Rob Carney in particular up in the air. They're both very, very good. I think, Teddy Tama, not brilliant under a high ball. Pale, caught one, I think, that I remember. Vakatawa, definitely not very proficient in the air. So I think that's don't be afraid of what people are going to say about your game plan and how you're going at them. I think we could have played that a little bit more. That said, that very first attacking play that they went wide, where both wingers found themselves over on the right touchline, was beautiful.
In the first 5 minutes.
Play. In the first 2 minutes. Launch,
yeah.
First launch off line out, I think it was.
Yeah.
Lovely little intricate play, ball behind, loop play around the back, and Bundyaki broke through the tackle, fed to Stockdale, who fed to Earls, and they must have made 20 metres. So you got the sense that, okay, we're able to play here. I don't know whether we got our shape properly right, whether the extra pressure coming from the French defence had a negative impact on us as well. But when it's not going for you, I think, like I said, you just cut your cloth a small bit and go back and simplify things and see it as a game where you're just going to need to kick your goals. And they managed to do that. They were keeping the scoreboard ticking over. The penalty count was very much in their favour. So it wasn't vintage Ireland by any stretch of the imagination, but they came against a very, very aggressive French defence, and sometimes you have to respect that too.
Okay, so France played better than we thought they were going to do, and we maybe didn't adapt enough in-game to that challenge.
We didn't. Do you know what? I think it would have been a very, very different different game if we had a different referee. Nigel likes an open game, and sometimes when the conditions aren't right for that, you get almost a conflicting sense of what should be happening. He wants it to run, but then I thought, and a couple of times for Ireland as well, it could have penalised both teams collectively probably another 5 or 6 times at ruck time easily. Yeah. If you had a Wayne Barnes there, the penalty count would have been through the roof. He wouldn't have stood for that amount of the tackler lying on the ball. And we saw Bundy got caught in a ruck, unlucky once or twice. I think 1 or 2 other players were fortunate that they didn't roll away immediately. The French were at it all day. Yeah. So I think you needed a referee to lay down the law early on, and I don't think Nigel ever did that. A couple of opportunities for him to brandish a yellow card to keep the French in check, with Valamina in particular giving away 3 or 4 silly penalties. Yeah. So I think that had a big impact. I'm a big fan of of Nigel Owens, and I think he had an off day, and as a result, he has a big impact on the fluidity of the game, and he just let it become an absolute scrap at ruck time, and you can't get any momentum, you can't get into the game through your multi-phase if you have super slow ruck ball, because numbers are back on their feet, line speed is very aggressive, and the knock-on effect is big numbers against similar numbers, and then it becomes very attritional.
Could Ireland have adapted better to the referee?
Probably. I think they could have been a little bit more clinical at ruck themselves. They'll look at that. They pride themselves on being proficient at ruck time with a couple of players and maybe a third. So they're big on this, identifying a left side barrel, a right side barrel, clean out those two rucks. So as you're coming to it, you should know which side of the ruck you're going to hit. Let's not have two players going down the right side or two players down the left. 1-on-1, and then a third player behind as security in case they need to clean anything else up. We've been so good at that over the last number of years. That's not a new thing. I just don't think we were quite as proficient with it. And maybe there's an aspect as well with the ball carrier. In some instances I thought James Ryan was very good. His fight on the ground and ball presentation was excellent. But I think lots of players got held up, and French players were wrapping their arms in the bottoms of rucks, and unless you get a referee penalising that early on, they're going to do it all day long. So I'd be really interested. I'd love to see the match referee's report and talk to Nigel to see how he evaluated his own performance, because on the whole, he is the world's best referee, I think. Being pushed hard by one or two others now, but he's it wasn't a day to remember for him. Any
sense of change required to, people are calling for alarm rate, basically. Teddy Thomas does that thing, and we don't have any player in the team who can do that. The one guy in our squad isn't actually in the matchday squad who might be able to do that.
I found it quite interesting that Stockdale got subbed off almost immediately after that Teddy Thomas try.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction from Joe, sending Fergus McFadden on. Fergus is what you're getting with him. He's probably not a game breaker, but I thought he had a really good, for what we needed in that last segment, 6-7 minutes, I thought he had some brilliant moments. So it ended up being a good substitution, and not like for like. Joe will be able to separate what happened in the last 6-7 minutes from the previous aspects of the performance, and he will be disappointed. And it's, in many ways, it's a dream scenario for a coach when you've been really below par, and then you still manage to get a win away to France, and your hopes are still alive. That is a nice place to be, because the elation and everything that came with in the aftermath of the game, and how everyone's lauding Johnny and everything, they will be brought down to earth this morning with an absolute bang. And Joe will have pulled apart that video yesterday, and he'll have shown very few. He'll probably show them how proud he is of that segment, but not a whole lot else.
That'll be the start, and then there'll be like 25 minutes of this.
Of pulling apart. Look at this detail. This isn't good enough. Why weren't we proficient in this area? Why didn't we do this when this was?
Is the focus on that? That's what you're talking about. The others, that like making mediocre decisions when there was a good decision to be made.
Yeah, it is. It's they're smart enough footballers to play lots of heads up, and their shape was good at times, but they pulled the trigger on the wrong pass a few times. And against good sides in tight games, you've got to take that opportunity. When I looked at the video again this morning, and just once or twice it seemed as though they'd preordained what the call was going to be, where an alternative option out the back had them around the corner. And you've got to take chances against really watertight defences. And you're looking at defences at the minute. England's defence is very aggressive. You get very little time. They're there to frighten you. Wales likewise. So there mightn't be a million tries to come by, so you have to take your opportunities, particularly in those away fixtures.
You mentioned Joe Schmidt there and what the camp might be like this morning. What's the methodology there? Is it a group video session and then individual errors pointed out in front of everybody else?
It'll be probably it'll be a group session first. Not necessarily individual errors, but this is where we can improve. This is why we're only operating at 60% of our performance level, and he'll pick out. You know, I'm sure it'll be a long video session today. He likes a long video session at times. It could be upwards of an hour, but he'll pull apart, you know, where they practiced during the week and why something hadn't been implemented. And there might be a little bit of finger pointing if it's necessitated, if someone's been lazy or someone's run a bad decoy line, or someone has opted to not be involved in a sequence of play for 3 or 4 phases. There's no hiding places. If it's happened, he's seen it. And the players know that in advance. I think players often talk about being out on the park and working hard because they know if they don't, that it'll be picked up on the video session the following day or the following couple of days. So there are some scare tactics involved in that, but he'll have a huge sense of relief. But it'll be park that today. How do we improve, and then focus on Italy tomorrow?
We're unbelievably reliant on Johnny Sexton, and will continue to be as long as he plays like this. And there's no way around that, is there? Like, you can't fake the game time with whoever we think is going to be the next 10, probably Joey Carberry.
Yeah, you don't get that calibre of 10 in a country like Ireland, you know, very often. And Joey looks like an immense talent. He's getting no opportunity, both for club in the 10 jersey and the national team, because Johnny wants to play every minute, every opportunity. So it's not a perfect scenario, provided Johnny stays fit. We're okay, but if, you know, God forbid something does happen to him, we are very reliant on him. But
like, he almost never finishes the 80 minutes. It's a miracle that he's still on the field with 82 minutes.
Kevin Gatland, our old Leinster teammate who's good friends with him, said there's no 10 in the world that can tackle that way and then pull the trigger on a kick 42 metres in the 82nd or 83rd minute. He's an incredibly fit player, so professional, one of the most professional out there, incredibly diligent to obviously all the tasks that are expected of him, his line kicking, his goal kicking, but all the other parts of knowing everyone else's game. He's probably pretty prescriptive in understanding everyone's role, but I think we've seen a little bit more in the last couple of years of his ability to play more heads up in a less prescriptive role. Both through Leinster and in Ireland. And when you've got a great halfback pairing or halfback partner like Conor Murray there too, I think he's got the capabilities of being able to see something, the landscape changing, and then reacting as such. And I think that's why both of those, I'd say, I would almost say equally that we're reliant on the two of them.
So what do you, like, longer term, right, taking into account what's just happened, that we've won this game where we had this sense that we're a much better team, like, do you stand them both down for 6 months next year and go, okay, off you go, and make sure your bodies are absolutely perfect for the summer of 2019?
It's very hard to do that. You know, Conor Murray, touch wood, is very rarely injured. Obviously he excels when he's playing a lot. He covers a lot of minutes. Johnny's getting a little bit older, probably needs a little bit of protecting from himself as well, and from his enthusiasm to play the game the whole time. So it's a very difficult thing to do, to step someone down and refuse them access to a Six Nations or doing their role, what they love doing. So you might get a negative reaction from
you can come back with a chip on the shoulder.
Neither of them are going to agree to do that. If anything, you know, maybe next November there's a chance to not play them as much. Maybe they'll definitely look at some other options in Australia during the summer. Undoubtedly, Joey Carberry has to get game time there. It's not about going and winning a series there. That's about getting players game time that are going to be involved in Japan in 2019. So an opportunity to pick up both, because they'll fancy themselves a good chance of winning a series in Australia, but you have to get game time to some of those new kids that are breaking onto the scene, but players like Joey Carberry, like Kieran Marmion, like Luke McGrath, they have to get more game time and get comfortable in a pressurised environment.
Because that environment, like, only the players in the field know what that environment was really like. You can watch it and go, I wish I was part of that, but you can't fake that experience.
No, you can't. And they're not thinking a whole lot. Like, we can pull it apart all you like, but they're just thinking about the next phase. They really are. And they're thinking, I better hold on to this one. Like I saw at one stage, 78 minute, Rob Kearney had a juggle with one.
Yeah.
And that was it. All you needed was one juggle. So for that ball control for 41 phases at that end of the game is testament to their mental toughness, their physical resilience, and their ability to stay in the fight as long when it's gone against them. When a game that they appeared to be in control of slipped away, they could have felt sorry for themselves. They dug in, said, let's not worry about that. They got lucky with that Anthony Bellew missed goal. He should have knocked that over and made it a 4-point game. And it might have been very different then. I don't think we'd have scored a try. But they don't know. They're a team now that don't know when they're beaten. And that's a very, very important skill to have.
Because the motivation this week is obviously to get better and improve on the stuff that they point out in the video sessions, but the ability to have those conversations with a smile on your face, as opposed to, am I going to get dropped? Am I the one who was responsible for us blowing our chance at a Grand Slam? Like, that's the bit that most analysts will just go, oh, Ireland were not able to create chances, as opposed to actually seeing that these are human beings and they will have this sense of incredible pride and progress, and we can't measure that.
Yeah, like, I think they did create some opportunity. Maybe we weren't bashing away at the line, but it's not all doom and gloom in advance to that final segment too.
Yeah.
Like they put together some good passages of play. They were in the lead up to the 71st minute. The try they conceded will annoy them. Poor kick chase. Conor Murray was out on his own. Rob Kearney will be disappointed that he didn't trust Bundyaki, who was defending inside him. It was slightly behind him. He probably should have just waited him to catch up and used the touchline as that extra defender. He got burnt on the outside. Stockdale probably should have reacted a little bit earlier and at least gotten some form of drag to slow him down. You're not getting a full hit on Teddy Thomas there, but then someone else can come in and finish that off. Keith Earls, if he'd gotten a bit more of a grab, Keith Earls was going to finish that tackle off. You're in scramble then, but they're a team that's well used to scramble. You give yourself a fighting chance. Yeah. Whereas that one will really have annoyed them, because yes, it was against the run of play, but in tight games you still have to make yourself impenetrable to those X factor tries, and we made it Teddy Thomas look very good by pretty average defending.
There's more X factor to come from better teams though, isn't there?
Yeah, England looked in parts really, really sharp against Italy. I saw the game having recorded it, so you get a sense, you're looking at score lines, you're waiting to see what the ebb and flow of the game is like. And I was thinking, what was it, 17-10 at half-time? Yeah. So it got England or Italy are right in it. But England should have been out of sight. They absolutely bashed them the first 10-15 minutes, scored a couple of great tries. Their launch play looked really good. So from an Italian perspective, obviously that's the game that let's not jump ahead to England just yet. Let's look at Italy in advance. They're much improved. Their skill level is vastly better on previous seasons. They've got good shape, but at home, I think we'll be able to pull them apart. And England ended up scoring 46 odd points today against them, and you'd anticipate that we should be able to do something similar, where anything less than a bonus point would be disappointed with.
Does Jordan Larmour start?
Possibly. I don't know where he starts. I still think that he starts him on the wing if he's going to start him somewhere. There's a bit more protection there. You won't see the best of his attacking play, because you need it. You need that in counter attack when the ball's kicked down to him. I wonder. See, Jacob Stockdale's not done a whole lot wrong. He didn't have his best game ever. He had that moment of the Teddy Thomas try. but he was relatively quiet. Rob Kearney had a good first 30 minutes and then a couple of errors. So does he give them another go against Italy, or does he get brave and put Jordan Larmour in? I think it's a good game to put him in personally. If he wants to see him in that World Cup squad in Japan in 2019, I think this is a good game to start him with.
Yeah.
Because there's a protection to this. If we're not beating Italy, reasonably comfortably at home, with this caliber of team now, we gotta look at ourselves, or what are we going to do in a World Cup? So I think it's a good chance to play Jordan now.
People are getting in touch as well on Twitter by asking about the HIAs, and so I'm kind of conflicted by this. Right, it looks like these are issues with knees, and yet the HIA ends up getting called. That's an injury replacement. No HIA was what you tweeted in the middle of the game. At some point, does rugby have to be overcautious, or is this just?
But that was clearly no.
Someone gave me.
What happened was we saw the aftermath in real time. Saw his knee buckling. Thought that's a knee injury. He held his head because he was in pain. So therefore, you have to go back and look at the video analysis of whether it's a HIA or not.
Yeah.
No impact whatsoever to the head. Nothing. Conor Murray tackled. Who's it? Dupont tackles him. He hits the ground. There's no impact of the head on the ground, and you see the anguish is to do with his knee injury. When you know it's a serious knee injury as well, you're going to grimace and you're going to be very frustrated. That's an immediate. Grabbing your head is an immediate reaction to disappointment and disillusionment about just being on the park, and now you're going to have to go off. So I thought it was pretty disgraceful that. I don't know whose decision it was. I get that it's not Nigel's issue, because he has to put the onus on the French doctor, and for them to go, oh yeah, it's a HIA. He was given a few chances by Nigel as well. Are you sure? He kept asking him because he questioned it himself. He knew, and Johnny Sexton came in and questioned it also, and rightly so. He could clearly see that Machineau shouldn't be able to come back on the park. So for Nigel, I get it that he's got to leave it across to the medics, but there's something not right there. It's not the first time it's happened. We had a very, very similar scenario against Wales at the end of last year, Six Nations, with scrummaging, and World Rugby, in my opinion, need to have a serious look at this one.
What could the solution be for something like this?
I think an independent doctor watching video footage.
They're saying it is an independent doctor.
But I don't think that decision's come from. I'd be interested to know.
French afterwards were asked about it, and they're like, "Oh, it's nothing to do with us. It's an independent doctor."
But if that is the case, that's an awful decision from an independent doctor. I get that we have to weigh on the side of caution, but that is clearly a manipulation of the rules.
And it could have had a significant impact if they'd let the
Machineau
kicker
kick.
Yeah. If he come on and kicked it,
which he had been kicking.
Yeah.
So, and he was obviously cold for the last 5 minutes, so Bellew coming on, okay, warm.
But if he had a bit more bolshiness about him, was going, I'm going to take this kick, because I'm in the team.
But even having the organisation of a scrum half, of a proper scrum half in that last sequence of defence, it's not just worry about the kick, to be able to point people into the right places. Scrum halves have an innate ability to be able to plug the line. Good defensive scrum halves. We've got two of them in Conor Murray and McGrath that read where they're needed very well. And Machineau, I thought, actually had quite a good game. Would have that understanding where he needed to plug. Also, in that circumstance, he needed to stay in the chip line. All France needed to do was have one in the backfield with him in the chip line. They were able to play the wingers quite high because the risk of kicking long was pointless. So the only thing they could do was play kick contest. That's why Vakatawa was playing up quite high. Rather than coming running onto the ball like Earls did, because the threat was with running. So it's all those matters. It's not just the goal kicking, and it's not just if they had the ball, but in defence too. So for me, that was really wrong. And I said afterwards, I don't think just because we've won that it should be swept under the carpet. I think this is a big issue, and lots of players are in agreement that that's unacceptable, because it's us this week, this weekend, and we've come through. Wales weren't so lucky last year, and who's next? And there's a lot at stake in these games.
Yeah, no, a huge amount at stake. Obviously, entire careers rise or fall on the basis of what happens over the next couple of weeks. You did warn us on Friday that this Welsh team was pretty good, and it turned out they were sensational.
Yeah, they were really good. Joe, the Scarlets are so confident at the moment, and there's 10 of them in that starting lineup, and you can see they're brimming with confidence right now. They look very fit. I think they ran the legs off Scotland. Scotland looked overconfident. You know, this loose game that they're trying to be renowned for. And Gregor Townsend's had some real success with Glasgow with them, and obviously the success with them in beating Australia twice in the first 6 months of his tenure. So let's not get away from the fact that it's been good to them. But I thought their defence was very disjointed at times. They looked rattled. Their forwards looked absolutely exhausted after about 25 minutes. Yeah. They were out on their feet. I was just watching them trying to get around the corner. Johnny Gray looked really fatigued. Finn Russell had a real off day.
Complete opposite of last year's start of the tournament as well.
Yeah. And the big question for Scotland for a long time has been, can you do it away from Murrayfield? And on that showing, no, not a whole lot's changed. They're going to have to come to Ireland. I don't know if they have 3 at home or 2 away or vice versa, but they're obviously definitely coming to Ireland. So they've got to get an away win. They have to. For real credibility in this tournament, and to finish anywhere beyond 4th, you've got to get away wins. And yeah, they've got England in Murrayfield too. That won't be any easy win. It'll go a long way towards getting everyone back on side if they go and beat England. But ultimately, going away from home and getting absolutely trounced in your first game when so much is expected of you, it's not easy to take.
That Welsh confidence as well, that kind of we've seen them with teams that didn't have the whole weight of expectation on them. They come from nowhere in some respects, and this isn't a team come from nowhere, but it is like if you had that starting 15 given to you 6 months, a year ago, you would have said, wow, who are these guys compared to who you would expect to be playing for them, with shorn of so many lines. Like, you've just seen them just emerge and go, no, we're Wales, we can do this, we can run in tries against everybody. And
everyone thought Gats was nuts saying we're going to win the championship, and on that basis they've got to be proper contenders. Yeah, because they have to be a bit fortunate not picking up any more injuries. They're playing, a lot of those guys. So you look at that back row, Navidi, in ahead of Tipuric, Moriarty at 8, and instead of Faletau, and Shingler at 6, who has been brilliant for Scarlets, but is he an international 6? They were top quality, all 3 of them, and they're playing with a loose as Alan Wynne had. Alan Wynne Jones had a brilliant game, I thought. That just before they scored their second try, when they broke the length of the field and knocked the ball on the line, like, that is high skill level. Yeah. Linking between forwards and backs. That would have been a sensational try if Steph Evans had managed to hold it. They scored off the next scrum when Glasgow or when Scotland had put in a crooked feed, but they look very, very confident, and Gats will love coming over here and potentially upsetting a Grand Slam game.
Like, how big is that Gatland factor? Obviously, the Scarlets thing is the single biggest factor in this Wales upturn in fortunes, because this, you did warn us about Wales, but it was a shock result, the manner in which they did it, I think. So, and how big is the Gatland thing? Because that seems to have been the other thing that's changed, other than this huge upshoot from the Scarlets.
I was shocked at the manner of the victory. I thought it would be a tight game. I thought Wales at home, Wales at home it's a tough game. So I did fancy them just to scrape it by Scotland, but not by that scoreline. The Gats thing will always be relevant when he's coaching against Ireland. He did feel badly burnt by it, and I don't think that's ever going to go away. And then you have the added impact of what went on, what was said after the Lions tour with Sean O'Brien. That also will have a bearing on how he preps the team for the week and how he, the extra words that he says in the dressing room beforehand. Or
he counted up every minute Sean O'Brien had played for Ireland against Wales that night at the Stella. He'd gone off and done work. He'd got somebody to look up the stats on how often Sean O'Brien had played for Ireland against Wales and how many of those games he'd won. It was like, he's a man who bears grudges.
He absolutely is. And he didn't need extra ammunition because of the stinging he got from Ireland when he was let go and Eddie O'Sullivan was promoted in 2001. But it's been added with what happened during the summer and the aftermath. So, he will have his team rightly primed for this because they've come and spoiled the party before. They'll have... it won't be... The thing too as well, and maybe that's us looking at ourselves in a selfish way, they'll also be thinking slam.
Totally.
They're not thinking, we'll stop Ireland from winning, a slam. They're thinking, this is a year for us to win a slam. Trying to think when they last won one, was it in 2012? They came to Ireland and beat us. Remember that Stephen Ferris tip tackle that allowed Halfpenny to knock over a late penalty, and that was the difference. They'll feel that they can break this Ireland defence down, and with the confidence that they're playing with, hard to argue with that.
Pretty good opening weekend, all told.
Yeah, I think it was a great opening weekend. Like our game against France wasn't a particularly good game, but it was the most exciting because of what happened, particularly if you're Irish. But everyone must have thought, wow. Yeah. Like that gets world respect. Being able to do that. Yeah. Any other team, team, if your team in black did that, people would be tipping their cap.
That's the point, because New Zealand didn't play really well against Ireland that day that they beat us in 2013, but they still managed to eke it out. That's what either we're going to be a great team or we're not, but you have to have some of this luck along the way, and you also have to get that momentum together. And that was a team who were a brotherhood, who were celebrating immediately. That kind of outpouring, that's important to see, I think.
Yeah, it is, and I think you can see a real tightness with this team. Whatever about the celebrations afterwards, it's easy to celebrate when you've had a monumental moment in time like that, and that will be, that won't be forgotten for many's a year. But I think in everything that they do, I think you can see that there's real togetherness, and that's a spirit that, yes, you would associate with us, but to have that combination with high skill levels, with real understanding how we want to play the game, with great structures, with a top class coaching ticket, I just think it's a good formula we've got going.
There's the headline on L'Équipe, cruel mais juste, cruel mais juste.
Cruel, yes, because they managed to get themselves back in the mix with 8 minutes to go, and how it transpired. Yes, it is, but we shouldn't have allowed that. I thought watching the game we'd win by 15 to 20. In the first 10-15 minutes.
Yeah, we were going to kill them.
Yeah, I think.
Look how easy we're moving the ball here.
Yeah. And they didn't let us into the game, but we never really got a foothold in it properly. And yeah, you need to get to that 9 point. If you get to 9 points and get something thereafter, I think that's the breaking threshold. Yeah. We never managed to do that.
All right, Brian, good stuff.
I think we need more of this kind of celebration, by the way. You mentioned the brotherhood there, proper kind of soccer-style celebration. Go to Twickenham, Johnny Sexton puts over a drop goal like that. Go and celebrate in front of the English fans. Do proper Emmanuel Adebayor sliding on your knees style. I thought that was outstanding yesterday. Conor Murray should not be apologising for the celebrations.
Yeah. What I like is for me is celebrating collectively. I just don't, the soccer celebrating individually with the fans, that's not for me. That's not really our thing. But if you're celebrating in groups, in proximity to fans, and bring it all together, provided you've got love for your fellow teammates, and rather than it's all about you. Look at Johnny, it wasn't about... No, he didn't run off like Austin Healy did in the Heineken Cup when they won against Munster years ago, celebrated on his own. That was a collective thing, and I think that's where you can see a tightness. He came back to them rather than going, I'm the man. It was yes, what a brilliant job we all did.
And they did. Good stuff, Brian. Thanks a million.
Cool.
We'll let you go training. Right, we had Liverpool and Spurs, the 2-2 draw live and off the ball yesterday afternoon. Here are the final whistle thoughts of Nathan and Kev.
They took the lead, 2 or 3 minutes into the game. Bad mistake from Eric Dyer. So dominant in the first half. They perhaps should have been one or two more goals up than they actually were at half-time. But I think you've got to credit Pochettino in the second half. I think he changed the style, certainly changed the team, the style of play. I think he played the fullbacks a little bit higher, caught Liverpool out so often through that second half. But yes, I would maybe question Jurgen Klopp. The change of system certainly didn't work for Liverpool. Going to a back five cost him, I think, overall. And I think the personnel change, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain coming on, he wasn't right coming into the game. I think Matip coming into a back three, centre-half, back five, defensive as it was overall. I think that's cost Liverpool today, I think, ultimately. So you can question the decisions.
Bad day for Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, I think it was. You can question the decisions of the referee, and many people have their opinion on that. I feel as though he got both calls completely correct. But ultimately, I think Jurgen Klopp has had a bad day today, because I think, given the fact is that how dominant they were in that first half, they've allowed Tottenham back into the game and defended very, very poorly in the second half.
If Mo Salah's 21st goal of the season had proved to be the winner, Liverpool would have been 5 points clear of Spurs. As it is, the gap remains 2. If it is just one of these two that's going to finish in the top 4, does today give you any great hint as to which of them it's going to be?
You still fancy Liverpool, given the fact is that they're in the position that they're in, and when they play here at Anfield, you're always going to fancy them. But how they couldn't see that game through today, particularly as you say, when Mo Salah got what looked like the winning goal to us in injury time, how they couldn't see that game through, just after Harry Kane missing a penalty as well to put Spurs 2-1 up. It was just an amazing sequence of events, and you'll always question Liverpool defensively, because any ball that's played into the penalty area, there's so much uncertainty. Lovren had such a good game up until the moment Liverpool go back to a back three or back five, as I've said. He was all over the place, and it just caused so much uncertainty for Liverpool.
Yeah, we're getting full value for money here at Anfield at the moment, and we'll have more Liverpool next Sunday on Off the Ball. We'll have full coverage of their trip to Southampton.
Yeah, pretty dramatic finale to that game as well. It was a weekend for pretty dramatic finales.
It was, yeah. We're getting full value for Anfield from Anfield at the moment. Was my favourite line there from Nathan. Not hiding his glee one bit. That's just the pure theatre in his favourite theatre, of course. Just coincidentally happens to be there. But yeah, dramatic finales everywhere. It was just so sweet to wake up this morning, despite the fact they only got about 90 minutes of sleep, and Tom Brady was a loser. It just felt so good.
Why do you hate Tom Brady so much?
Because...
See, I kind of... I didn't really want him to win, but I wanted to see him get close to... If anybody who hasn't realised this yet, the Eagles obviously beat the Patriots, if you're just waking up and just joining us. And the Eagles were in front for most of the game until... There was, in the fourth quarter, eventually Tom Brady once more overturned a double-digit lead, and the Patriots took the lead, and he thought, okay, well, that's it. And then there was this brilliant, really quick move down the field that left too much time on the clock. It feels like 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes, 40 seconds or whatever for the Patriots to go down the field, and at that point all they needed to do, I think that all they needed to do at that point was to...
score a touchdown.
Yeah. So you think he's going to do this, right? And then he gets sacked. And there's a fumble, and it's like...
The only sack of the game as well.
I've never seen this. Never. And he still has one more chance. There's still time for one Hail Mary to Gronk in the end zone at the end, which obviously dropped short, but...
Yeah, they would have needed to go for 2 after that, yeah, obviously. But, like, he was actually pretty good in the pocket last night, I thought. Especially that moment, was it to Amendola, that huge reception, is it in the first or the second quarter, where Brady, it's like crosshairs narrowing on him, and he just slides out nicely, and this mobility that people talk about that he may have lost because, you know, he's 40 years old, it seems to not have deserted him at all. But... You do start to wonder now, like, have we seen the peak? It would be very, very hard to make a case that we haven't seen the peak of Tom Brady. Some might argue it was this season, but I don't think 41-year-old Tom Brady is going to be better than 40-year-old Tom Brady. That last night might be the one that potentially sings him the most.
Post-match, Rob Gronkowski was talking about potentially retiring at the end of this season, that he's not sure if he's coming back. Brady said 100% he's definitely coming back. No word about Bill Belichick, I said yet. We'll talk about the NFL and the Super Bowl in a couple of minutes' time. We'll get the thoughts of Mike Carlson in Minneapolis and Cian Fahey as well. If you have anything you'd like to get off your chest on that, you can get in touch with us here at Off the Ball AM on Twitter. And there's a new button on Twitter that you can actually press to make sure that anytime we start broadcasting live, it alerts you to that, so you won't miss any of our goodness. And remember, you can also get us facebook.com/off the ball as well. We should talk about some of the GAA stuff, because you were actually at the game between Kerry and Mayo. This is the moment where everybody starts saying, ooh, it's like the class of 92 all over again.
Maybe. I don't think it's to that extent, to be quite honest, considering...
Why not? They were brilliant.
They were brilliant. They were brilliant also because of two players who were not part of the class of '92, this 4-in-a-row minor-winning team, and were absolutely outstanding. Gavin Crowley, for example, is a fella that not many people would know, even from Kerry, and he was many people's man of the match on Saturday night. He scored Kerry's goal. He was absolutely brilliant. He was sensational in the league final against Dublin last year. But at
What type of player is he?
He's well, first of all, he is your textbook centre-back. So himself and Sean O'Shea are actually textbook centre-backs and centre-forwards, respectively, which kind of seems to have gone out of Gaelic football in recent years. But he sits there, gets the ball, goes up to the pitch at his own leisure. If he can string together a couple of passes, he will. And when he retreats, reads the game beautifully. And he's just like a basic footballer who does everything very, very well.
He carries on to Cian Sullivan now. Can he play not the traditional stopper centre-back anymore, but actually somebody who's going to be the starter and sweeper?
Well, that would be great if he was, because Kerry don't have a player like that. They tried Paul Murphy in that role against Mayo last year.
Murphy, by the way, back into the top 10.
Back into the top 10 for me. As we said, I think we made that point during the week. Murphy and McBrearty would be my two changes into our football power rankings to put them right up there. He was very, very good again on Saturday night. Just consistently Kerry's best player at the moment. Paul Genney stepped up when he needed to be, but at the same time handed the penalty to Sean O'Shea when it came up. O'Shea missed, but it was actually a pretty good save from Clark, to be honest. So O'Shea will take more of that. He'll learn from that, and of course, it's from a Mayo perspective, while it looked on paper that they were in a much better place than Kerry, they're not. They do have a bit to go, but sure, they got to an All-Ireland final last year, so you can't expect them to be that far down the line in their preparation. But you would have serious concerns for their forwards, and it has always been the case with Mayo. It seems like a cliche at this point to criticise their front six, but even when Kerry were down to 13 men, it wasn't like a barrage of chances. It was a barrage of possession at times, but they weren't incisive enough to actually create those opportunities. Killeen O'Connor obviously misses 2 very bad frees. Maybe he's just lacking that bit of sharpness that you wouldn't have at the start of February. So that'll come with Mayo in time. I just thought they lost the game rather than Kerry being absolutely sensational to win it, but boy was it gritty from Kerry.
You watched the game in Castlebar Mitchell's clubhouse?
I watched the rugby in Castlebar Mitchell's clubhouse. The place, absolutely, as you can imagine, went absolutely mental when Sexton nails that drop goal. And all this nonsense about, we won't show rugby or soccer in a GAA clubhouse. It's complete crap. Why would you not do that? I mean, these are all great sporting organisations in their own right, and because there have been other clubhouses that have, they won't show anything other than GAA. But thankfully, the people of Castlebar Mitchells have a pretty high IQ, or they're not stuck in the dark ages. That they're true on the rugby, and everybody was delighted to watch it, and then do their 2-minute walk to their seat. So it was perfect. The Mayo fans, of course, giving us a lovely welcome. Those delightful bunch of people who. Let's just say we had, myself and my fellow Kerry cohort, we had some heated exchanges with some Mayo fans, yeah.
What, you were starting crowd trouble? You went to Mayo and the Kerry lads brought crowd trouble with them?
I've never experienced, proper rows in the stand. Maybe with Dublin fans once or twice, but never with Mayo fans.
What did you do?
Well, the main one...
I'm assuming you deserved it.
Well, I'll tell you, and you can make up your own mind. So at half-time, Mayo stayed in the dressing room 6 minutes longer than Kerry, and I was getting a bit angry. Kerry were out on the pitch for 4.5 minutes. They were almost warming up again. I just kind of shouted out, Mayo, come back onto the pitch or something along those lines.
It's an early bath for you, Mr. Cantona. Is that what you said?
Something along those lines. To be fair, I didn't swear. I wasn't that angry. I just shouted that Mayo should be getting their act together and get back on the pitch. And a fella 2 rows in front of me, a pretty elderly man, turned around to me and was like, "Are you trying to start something?" Which I thought was bizarre. I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Good." And I was like, "What?"
That's you told.
Yeah, and he turned around, and there was a bunch of fans who came over to a couple of my fellow Kerry cohort after the game and said, "Your behaviour was disgraceful today."
Oh, right. What did you do?
It wasn't to me specifically, it was to some of the people I was with.
And what were they doing? Was it disgraceful?
It was, okay.
The roughest sort of fucking animals.
I'm a big fan of Aidan O'Shea, but our other Kerry fans are not big fans of Aidan O'Shea.
And your mates are scumbag mates who...
Wow, you just call my friends scumbags.
Well, I don't know them, so, there's a big group of people, I'm not libeling any of them, but who actually pick on individuals who are out there doing their best.
Well, Aidan O'Shea is susceptible to getting more abuse than other players. I don't know why, when, he may resort to some dark arts here and there. Now, by the way, before we get into this, I will be the first to say that Kerry resorted to dark arts during the game. I'm not really accusing him of anything. When I say resorting to the dark arts, it's like, a little bit of a shove after a free is given, and then suddenly everybody erupts because it's Aidan O'Shea, and he doesn't deserve that sort of eruption, but it happens. And
So your Kerry mates were originally going after Aidan O'Shea because, for no reason, it turns out. And I say fair play to the Mayo supporters for just reminding them, lads, that you're on tour.
yeah, kind of, but it wasn't particularly nasty stuff. They are, to a certain extent, precious at times. Kerry fans are also very precious. Mayo fans are precious as well. I thought that they gave a very, very big roar to, I think it was Shane Nally, who taunted Sean O'Shea when he missed that penalty, which I personally, in my personal opinion, I don't think it's a nice thing to see on the pitch. Maybe Mayo fans enjoy seeing that sort of stuff on the pitch, sledging. Which should, by the way, be a black card offence, but there was no black card shown. But anyway, the Mayo fans seemed to enjoy that particular moment of sledging and gave them a big Mayo, Mayo, Mayo chant. And the same again when Kerry were reduced to 13 men. I think I tweeted as much, actually, which I kind of regretted, to be honest. You should never tweet when in the heat of a moment at a match. But
Which tweet?
It's just complaining about the Mayo fans. But no, each to their own. I mean, like
You just said it now on the show.
Yeah.
So obviously you didn't regret it that
no,
much.
I still stand by it. Once a man is down, you keep kicking, don't you? That's what you should be doing.
All right, so you're cock of the walk this week. That's how it works.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, like when you take your victories, you better enjoy them. And I see some people coming over to us after the game, being like, "Well, who won the All-Ireland final, or who won the All-Ireland semi-final last year?" And it kind of seems like a bit of a pointless comment given the history of the fixture.
Yeah. All right. So my mic fell off there. That's why I'm holding it at the moment. There's your tweet there. Biggest Mayo, Mayo, Mayo chant of the night arrives when Kerry get reduced to 13 men. Almost as impressive as the Mayo, Mayo, Mayo chant when Shane Nally roared in Sean O'Shea's face to taunt him when he missed the Kerry penalty.
Yeah, it's all facts.
There you go. Some comments for you, mostly about the rugby and the football. Nigel Owens had a shocker. Find someone that looks at you the way. Find someone that looks at you the way that Owen looks at Bod. # relationship goals, says somebody on YouTube this morning. There you go.
I can't argue with that.
Julian Lee, how you doing, Julian? I've no qualms about the second penalty. For me, it's good forward play and Lamella was fouled, but the first penalty is farcical. Kane is offside and no amount of explanation will make me see it differently. Lovren does not deliberately play the ball in that direction. A lot of controversy about those penalties.
I'm a big fan of the whole Jekyll and Hyde personality complex that we have with Jurgen Klopp, and I think everybody's aware of it at this time. You know, the Mr. Nice Guy isn't necessarily the true Jurgen Klopp, and I think whenever a referee makes a controversial decision, I think we see it's illustrated perfectly, the contrast in his character. You know, this seething Jurgen Klopp, exactly, the gurning Jurgen Klopp, one might say. There was a video that went viral yesterday of the linesman kind of fist pumping when the penalty was given to Spurs, which obviously wasn't in celebration, but it just looked very, very funny.
Stuff. They should really stop doing that stuff. Anyway, okay. So that is most of the comments there. The crossfield pass was unreal, says Anthony Wallace. Schmidt reminds me of Martin O'Neill in many ways. Boring tactics and got very lucky, says Kevin Kane on that one. Good man, Kevin, says Clinton Fernie. Kevin had one too many Weetabix this morning. Crazy comment. Totally punching above our weight in World Rugby for years due to an exceptional management team and the right structures within the IRFU. Unreal performance Saturday. And then the two Dave McIntyre bicep emojis.
I wonder, is Johnny Sexton this morning, okay, so the celebrations are done, is he thinking more about that amazing moment that will go down in the annals of history as one of Ireland's superior rugby moments? Or is he thinking about that missed penalty 10 minutes previous?
I'd say he's thinking about a lot of stuff. Like when Brian was in earlier, he was saying that they're not in that final moments. They're just thinking, don't screw it up here, don't screw it up here. They're not thinking about much other stuff.
Yeah, but I mean this morning.
Yeah, but just to go back to that though, you can tell that they're so focused on the actual, that they're living in the moment, because there's no way that you would try that crossfield kick knowing the shit you're going to get if it doesn't come off. Like the criticism that you're going to get. So I would suspect that he's thinking a fair bit about the missed kick and like the narrow margins between absolute national hero, who the whole country now decides is somebody that we love and respect, to somebody who missed that kick and would have been the scapegoat. Like, and how fickle we as sports fans are, really.
If we don't win the Grand Slam, does it take some of the sheen off this in terms of Johnny Sexton's own... Like, this is Johnny Sexton's greatest moment in terms of endearing himself to the Irish public. Of course, you can mention anything he's done for Leinster, But this one significant thing that everybody can look at and is like, that is amazing. It's like, of course, his game management has been outstanding forever in an Ireland jersey, and his kicking has always been sensational. But this, like a walk-off win, to use the NFL term.
I know, it was amazing. It never happens.
It never happens. Like this, it has endeared him to the entire public. There were 1.5 million people that were watching it on television. This is as mainstream as you can possibly get. I don't think losing a Grand Slam would even take the sheen off this, because that moment has happened now. It is a kind of almost like Ireland's greatest sporting moments. This is kind of like this momentary thing, the competitive significance of it.
So they've got to win the Grand Slam for
the competitive significance. Of course they do, and it will gain even bigger significance. But I'm not sure.
I think they have to win the Grand Slam for the moment to have the significance. Because if say they lose 3 of the next, everybody goes, that was a failed season, and
sure,
and if he gets injured, and it's like, okay, if he gets injured, it becomes this kind of lost campaign. So, right. We will talk about the Super Bowl, an amazing win for the Philadelphia Eagles against the New England Patriots. Patriots made some odd decisions. They decided not to use one of the heroes from 2 years ago against the Seahawks. Malcolm Butler was on the field, dressed, and was on special teams, but wasn't used by Bill Belichick at all, and has said some stuff after the game about how they didn't trust him anymore. He's a free agent at the end of the season now, so obviously he won't be back, but it was a weird decision considering the defence was ripped apart. So we'll talk about that with Mike Carlson and Cian Fahey in a couple of minutes' time. But first, here's Adrian Barry at the Off the Ball Aviva fan studio, losing his shit at the final whistle.
We did it! Come on! You're live here at a pretty excited Aviva fan studio from the G Hotel in Galway with a panel full of legends and a brilliant game to get into. How the hell? What the hell just happened?
I'm still shaking, to be honest.
Yeah, wow. That was unbelievable.
Incredible.
Was about 40, I lost count at the end there, about 40 phases?
I think so, yeah. It was, look, I think the big thing is the fight and the big play. It has to be the kick across field. Up to that point, we were static as hell, and
we're all looking at that at the time, going, "Jesus, what are you doing?" But I mean,
I nearly hit my head in my hands. Yeah. And I was thinking, "Jesus!" But
I mean, because even the drop goal at the end, you're looking at that, Jenny, going,
phenomenal.
It's all on after 40
three
phases.
of us were like, "No!" Stop motion, kind of, and then ecstatic joy.
It's a ballsy play, isn't it? I mean, because you've done all the hard work that's required, Tommy, to get yourself in that position, and then it's all in or nothing.
A quick 22 dropout catch from the 22, and it looked like they were camped on the halfway line. A few big carries to just get them up to that 10-metre line. I mean, what a Sexton! Yeah. That kick will go down in history. Man. Incredible.
Come on!
I don't think it's on the TV, it's hard to tell, but it showed the conditions there, and we probably we mentioned it just before half time. We forgot to say it up here. The conditions probably dictated a lot, but Jesus, what a kick in those conditions! What a kick!
All right, time for us to turn to the Super Bowl, and what a bloody game it was. I'm delighted to say that we can cross over now to Minneapolis and join Mike Carlson. Mike, first off, what's your immediate response to the game? People are calling it one of the best Super Bowls in history.
Oh, yeah. We've had a run of really good Super Bowls, apart from that one in New York about 4 years ago. And there have been some great games. But this is one of the few that was like a start-to-finish shootout. It was like two punchers going and throwing loads of punches from beginning to end, and that astounded almost all of us, because you would have thought in such a situation that the Eagles defense would at least be able to step up. You could see scenarios where the Patriots defense would give up lots of yardage, but maybe not so many points. But it was like watching two really well-oiled offenses just have their way with the defenses.
When you consider that both teams had absolutely sensational defenses, especially over the second half of the season, that was kind of shocking in some ways. And why did that happen, or how did that happen? Was it simply the quality of the offensive coaching and the play calling and the play? Like, how did all of this happen in the biggest occasion?
It was a lot of that was play calling and coaching. The Eagles were able to dominate much of the game with their offensive line. I think that was probably the first big thing. And Nick Foles was able to hit a couple of plays where he and his receivers, especially Alshon Jeffrey in the first half, Zach Ertz, the tight end, in the second half, simply beat guys individually, and Foles put the ball in places where the receiver could get to it by beating the defensive back. Now, one of the weird stories of the game is that Malcolm Butler, the hero of the Super Bowl win in Seattle, did not play. He was on the sidelines dressed, but didn't play. He had arrived a day later than the team, which the team said at the time was due to illness. And the only reason they gave for his not playing was that it was a decision, a game day decision based on strategy or tactics or whatever. My suspicion would be, and this is only my speculating, that he wasn't actually ill when he missed, when he didn't come out with the rest of the team on Monday, that it turned out he wasn't actually ill and they just were fed up, but they needed him. They were down to 4 cornerbacks anyway. With him out, they had to use a lot more of their safeties covering receivers. It hurt them a lot in that game, which is not to take anything away from Philadelphia, who played a brilliant offensive game. I was likening them before the game to Jacksonville, similar, a better team top to bottom on the roster than the Patriots man for man, but with Nick Foles at quarterback, a question as to whether a quarterback could keep up with the Patriots offense, which did a great job of just playing with Philadelphia's defense till they found the areas where they could attack them and compensate for the fact that Philadelphia's D-line was playing pretty well. And Malcolm Jenkins, their safety, had a tremendous game all around, including unfortunately putting Brandon Cooks out of the game with a really hard hit. And I just thought that in those circumstances, the Patriots just came out and with formations schemed to get the matchups that they thought they could win. They just weren't as spectacular as the matchups that the Eagles were winning.
We should talk about the trick plays, the 2 trick plays, particularly in the first half. The one where both coaches scheme their quarterbacks to be receivers. Tom Brady drops his pass in the open field and Nick Foles catches his in the end zone. And I mean, look, you can't say that's the difference between the two sides at the end, but ultimately the trick play on 4th down works for the Eagles and it doesn't in the circumstances for the Patriots. If you were to be asked beforehand, you've got to pick one of these two teams to successfully execute, everybody is going to pick the Patriots.
Yeah, and then the Patriots worked the play pretty well. Danny Amendola, who wound up throwing the pass, was a little off balance when he threw it. Brady just couldn't stretch out and keep it in his hands, or if he had, he would have probably been close to a touchdown. He runs so slow, you can't actually guarantee that he would have beaten him again. And that came right after Cooks left the game, and we're you're sitting there asking who's going to take his place for the Patriots. When the Eagles did it down the goal line on 4th and 1, I had no doubt they would go for a touchdown on 4th and 1 in those circumstances, knowing Doug Peterson, the coach, and not doing what Jacksonville did against the Patriots, which was to take their foot off the pedal somewhat. But this play was unlike the Patriots, which was kind of normal deception. This one took deception to the play acting stage, where Nick Foles was literally standing behind a tackle, adjusting his belt or checking his phone or something like that, and then just casually drifting out into the flat where Trey Burton, who's at another end like Amendola, threw the pass to him. And it was audacious to come back with the same kind of trick play, a pass to your quarterback, that the Patriots had just tried. And obviously the last thing they ever would have considered. And one of the problems with defending is that you generally don't have anybody assigned to the quarterback. If he's not under center or taking the snap in a shotgun, no one is responsible for him per se, and somebody has to shift on it. And of course, it's very difficult for guys to do that when everybody's moving around, throwing the ball back and forth as they were in those plays.
I don't want to sound wise after the fact, Mike, but can we look back on those 2 trick plays and look at what Eagles have been doing all season in terms of going for things when potentially they might not have done under a different coach? They've had, I guess, it's just been ballsier really than other teams to go for things on 4th downs, especially throughout the entire year. Is that evident at all when you're going through these trick plays that they've done this when it really mattered during the year, that they've had the confidence, the cockiness even to go for this throughout the year, and that's why it works?
Not necessarily trick plays, but yes, they've gone, they have relaxed offensively. They play a fairly aggressive defense as well. And we saw it in the win over Minnesota. They were leading 21-7 with, I think it was 37 seconds left in the half. And on 3 plays, they went down and kicked a field goal, made the lead 24-7 at halftime. And on the same day, Jacksonville, with a 4-point lead over New England, had 55 seconds and 2 timeouts and took knees and didn't try to put points on the board. And when you're, in any game, really, you're trying to win rather than avoiding trying to lose or trying to avoid to lose. When you're playing in the championship game against a team like New England, you can't leave points on the board. You can't tell your team, I don't think we can, I don't want to make a mistake against these guys, so we won't try to score. By doing those kind of plays, what you're telling them is, I have faith in you. I have confidence that you guys can score. You're a better team than they are. And I think that was, in one sense, a really key play, maybe the key play of the game.
Is this the end for the Patriots dynasty? I mean, I know everybody is loath to write them off, but you get to a point where you can only reach this level so often. And I know he had a massive number for his yardage, but Brady didn't seem as Brady-esque in various key moments in the game.
No, I know what you mean, and part of that was down to the the rush potential that the Eagles had. They hit him a lot in the first half. They got to him a lot, late, but they were still putting him on the ground, which is part of the strategy. And the second half, the Patriots protected him better until he gave up that sack, which changed, which basically changed the whole game. And after the sack, of course, they were getting to him because they knew he had to throw the ball deep, and it's one-dimensional. With the rumors we talked about a couple of weeks ago about the feud between Kraft and Belichick, Kraft protecting Brady, keeping him with the team, Belichick's losing his 2 coordinators, maybe his offensive line coach as well, maybe his special teams coach as well. And the business with Malcolm Butler leaves a kind of sour taste at the end of the season. So yesterday I would have said, no, I think Bill will be back. He'll like the challenge of putting together another winning team and doing it. Today, I don't know. And looking at his face after the game, you'd say, okay, that's it for Bill. But I think upon reflection, he'll probably not want to go out on a low note like that. Although so many great coaches hang on for too long, and and then go out, not necessarily with bad teams, but with mediocre teams or teams that fall below the standard of what they've established. So I'm really curious to see what's going to happen. It was a strange way to lose.
Last question for you. On a scale of Gaga to Prince, how was the halftime show?
You've hit the one area where I have zero expertise. Those whippersnappers can do whatever they like. What the great thing about the halftime show at the Super Bowl is that, especially when they take 7 minutes to set it up, all the crowd gets away from the public loos, and we can get out of the booth and go without having to stand in line, which is what I did the first half. I have to say, I like when I'm dressed better than the star of the halftime show. And I'm surprised nobody noticed. I have my father's road race toque from 1988, which I only break out in really cold weather. And it was bloody cold in Minneapolis today. I left it on the bus coming back to the hotel, and because it's icy, the bus driver was taking his time getting out of the parking lot, so I managed to get it back. But I wore it with pride and humility. It was so cold that I had icicles hanging down from my mustache. No way. And I don't have a mustache.
Goes there. Good man. Michael, thanks a million.
Hey, great match for Ireland yesterday, too.
Oh, yeah, balls. It turned out the theme of the weekend was big balls.
Well, I was watching the end. I managed to find a bar that had NBC Gold on it, and they were showing the match. It was wonderful.
Well, listen, enjoy the rest of your time in the Twin Cities. Thanks a million, Mike. Talk to you again soon.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
All right, we've got Cian Fahey with us this morning as well. Cian, we've been talking with Mike Carlson a little bit about his take on exactly how what happened. Maybe we should focus a little bit more on what the Eagles managed to do to rack up the big scores. We were talking on Friday. At that point, it was like Nick Foles isn't a great quarterback. Nick Foles isn't a bad quarterback, it turns out. He was able to put some balls into tight spaces that maybe we didn't think he was capable of. Is that the difference here between other teams this season, that they had a functional quarterback who was able to do stuff? Or what the hell happened?
No, I think he made some very good throws. That touchdown to Alshon Jeffrey was an outstanding throw. Jeffrey being such a big receiver is a very helpful thing. He had another throw over the middle. I think it was to Nelson Aguilar in the fourth quarter, which is another outstanding play. But for the most part, it was kind of what we expected, where the defense or the offense of the Eagles was able to spread the ball around so much. Like, it's a very balanced production. If you go through the running game, Blunt and Ajayi both had big games. The receiving game, Aguilar and Jeffrey both had big games. Clement had a big game receiving too. And that's kind of the way the Eagles are. It's so difficult to match up to everyone on the team. And you saw about halfway through the game, Belichick decided to follow Jeffrey with Stephon Gilmore. And it wasn't necessarily that Gilmore was shutting down Jeffrey. It was just that the Eagles saw that and they said, okay, we'll go to the matchups we like elsewhere. And that's kind of just how talented that offense is. I think Nick Foles got the MVP. Obviously, we tend to give the quarterback the MVP for the game. But I think that was more because there wasn't a standout offensive player. And obviously nobody on defense stood out. So you kind of just end up defaulting to the quarterback at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it was a slightly higher level of performance from Nick Foles than maybe we would have expected 4 weeks ago. After the performance in the conference game, you kind of thought, well, okay, so he's done that now. He's done it once. Can he do it again? It turned out he could. Like, that level of consistency from him, I guess, is again testimony to Doug Peterson's coaching and to what that coaching staff have been able to do, but also to his own balls to be able to come back from where he was. Yeah,
I think he's played the best football of his career, which, if you're familiar with Nick Foles, may sound a little bit crazy because he had that 27-2 season, but most of that season was luck. I wouldn't call this lucky. I don't think today he had crazy plays where he threw the ball to defenders and it bounced in the air and went to his receiver somehow, like he even had against the Falcons. I do think he played quite well overall. We tend to just kind of focus on the quarterbacks a little bit too much. I think one of the big keys, though, and I know it's getting a lot of praise right now, and Doug Peterson is getting a lot of praise right now, but I do really think he deserves it because he went into that game knowing that he had to win it on offense and that he had to be aggressive and force plays. And you saw it with that trick play to Foles for his receiving touchdown, where most coaches there, if you go to the Gus Bradleys, go back to the Jacksonville Jaguars championship game, they had 55 seconds left in the first half and they took 2 kneel downs and the Patriots eventually won a close game. Peterson went into that game and knew, even with his backup quarterback, even with Nick Foles, I'm going for everything I can here. Obviously they kicked field goals at times when they had to, but when there were opportunities to maximise the points they could get, he went and was aggressive with Foles, and that suited Foles, and it seemed to give Foles confidence.
It was a completely crazy game when you think about it. I'm only just remembering the Patriots missed field goal, the botched snap, the type of mistakes you don't really see from the Patriots at any stage, and then suddenly in the biggest game of the year, they're there for them tonight. I don't know what was going on. It was a very un-Patriots-y type Super Bowl.
Yeah, the Patriots, you see, the genius of the Patriots for years has often been that they don't beat themselves and they kind of wait for other teams to beat themselves. And the Eagles didn't do that. The Eagles to me, they did make some mistakes and they did kind of keep this game close. But it felt more like they were kind of keeping the game close, that they weren't going to lose it, that they were just giving the Patriots a little bit of life. And one of the fascinating things to me was when Brandon Cooks got hurt, it was after that Gronkowski really had a big impact. And that doesn't really make much sense because you've got Gronkowski out there with Amendola and Hogan and Philip Dorsett, guys who don't really threaten you. So I would have thought at that point the Eagles would have turned and put 2 players on Gronkowski or double, because one of the things I always ask myself is what would Bill Belichick do to stop his own offense, because they have that offense there and no one ever seems to kind of approach it properly, and Belichick always does that. And we didn't really see kind of any brilliant moves from Belichick or any brilliant play designs from Belichick, whereas you kind of saw the Eagles defense, on the defensive side at least, making mistakes, but they had enough talent overall and enough execution overall to still win the game. And that just speaks to that's a testament to the quality of that Eagles team.
Is it fair to say that the Eagles didn't really tap into the Super Bowl hype in terms of managing this game? As in, it's a little bit unfair on Falcons last year, but they didn't do a Kyle Shanahan, so to speak. They treated it like any other game, and when they needed to go for an extra point in the first half, like, they didn't execute it properly, but they went for it, and they didn't have any problem with that. They didn't see this as an unbelievably important moment in their destiny, that this was just another game. Is that fair to say in terms of how they approach this game, like this fearless attitude to taking on the Patriots?
You know, I kind of find it funny because if I'm Kyle Shannon, I'm sitting at home going crazy because all the commentary was doing was praising how aggressive they were, and last year all we did was kill Kyle Shanahan for not just running the ball and being conservative. So we kind of play the result when we do that. I always, when you've got a quarterback of the quality of Brady on the other side, I always like a team that's aggressive in that sense. And I think in general we tend to kind of overpraise aggressiveness. Like, you can be smart and you can be conservative and run the ball when you're playing with a lead, but they were never so far ahead that they kind of had to get that kind of, we were expected to win now. It was always 10 points. They were actually trailing in the fourth quarter. They were down by a point and had that unbelievable 7-8 minute drive. And that's where the real poise came in, because that's when they were really managing the game. So yeah, Peterson and his coaching staff, everyone there deserves a huge amount of credit. One of the nice things the Eagles had as well is they've got a blend of veterans there. They've got guys like Malcolm Jenkins and Chris Long on defense. They've also got the younger guys who are kind of entering the second and third year. Like, obviously Carson Wentz was hurt and Nick Foles has been around for a while, but they don't really have really young guys who they rely on. I think Derek Barnett is a rookie who recovered the fumble at the end, but the key players they have were older, experienced players. They weren't old players, but they've been around enough to not panic in big moments.
The other thing that they did was they largely built this team not through the draft the way traditionally the great teams have done, but they actually completely recast it and built significant key parts through free agency, which really means that the league is wide open. This is a team who had a losing record last season and they go to the Super Bowl this year. It does mean that you can pretty much, if you are managed properly and do the free agency thing properly, then you can actually become competitive really quickly in the league.
This is one of the big myths with the NFL. Kind of drives me a little bit insane. You say build through the draft, but if you go back through all of the recent Super Bowl winners, the Denver Broncos, half of their defense is built through free agency. The Seattle Seahawks became dominant when they signed Michael Bennett and Cliff Avril in free agency, as well as adding Percy Harvin didn't necessarily work, but it was a part of that Super Bowl team and he played a big role in the game itself. The Patriots won when they signed Darrell Revis and Brandon Browner in free agency. Every team does this, and you have a team like the Packers who have Aaron Rodgers on their roster and they refuse to spend money on outside free agents, and they're kind of lagging behind a team like the Eagles who are maximising their roster by exploring every avenue. They trade for JHI during the season, so it's not just free agency as well. They just generally they make smart moves. They don't care where they're coming from. They're aggressive when they need to be aggressive. They're cautious when they need to be cautious, and they deserve a lot of credit for the roster they've built.
How much does this tarnish the legacy, the Belichick Brady legacy? The Malcolm Butler story is going to be a key one over the next couple of days. People wondering why the hell they didn't pick him.
I found that interesting, but I think if you follow Belichick and how he's managed his cornerbacks, like, that's not unusual. He plays matchups. He does not just start the same guys all the time. Eric Rowe is there, who's actually a former Eagle. He has been inactive at times when he's been fully healthy, and it's not been because of his performance, it's because of the matchup with the specific receivers. That was kind of why it was confusing that Gilmore wasn't following Jeffrey from the very start, because normally that's the kind of thing he would do. Gilmore's a big tall receiver, or Gilmore's a big tall cornerback, Jeffrey's a big tall receiver. This isn't the Patriots have been to 7-8 Super Bowls or something at this point with Belichick and Brady. This one is long past the icing on the top of the cake for them. I don't think the Butler thing is going to hang around. I don't think that this loss is going to hang on them. Brady threw for over 500 yards, so he's not going to get any criticism, and he played generally quite well. He had a tough game, or a tough matchup in terms of the quality of the defense he was facing, so some of the throws he had to make were really impressive. Belichick is still solidified as the best coach ever, so that's never going to be a concern.
What happens to Nick Foles now, Cian?
Well, he's under contract next year, and I as much as the Eagles are celebrating how much they're happy and how much they'll be delighted with him, I don't think they're going to do him that favour of leaving him out of his contract. They're going to keep him, and he's going to sit behind Carson Wentz, especially when you've got a mobile quarterback who relies on his athleticism, like Carson Wentz, coming off an ACL tear. So they'll be delighted to keep Nick Foles for a year. Maybe they'll get trade offers. You just saw Alex Smith got traded. But Alex Smith was a starter. It's not like you were taking someone who hadn't been playing recently. And if you have seen Nick Foles over his whole career, you would really call this the short or the minority part of his career. You would not call this exactly what he's done overall. Overall, he's not been a good quarterback. So it's a kind of bit like Case Keenum in Minnesota, where you're buying into a hot hand for a couple of weeks, and I think you'd probably be snake bitten if you did try and make a big trade for him.
All right, good stuff, Cian. Thanks very much for that, and thanks very much for staying up for us all night. It's come to my attention that Jason Bell, star of the BBC's coverage, is an item with Nadine Coyle.
Yeah, when he told me that just a moment ago, my facial expression was the exact same facial expression as Nadine Coyle when she got her date of birth mixed up on Pop Stars. That is earth-shattering news. I just googled it there. There was a Daily Mail picture of them together. That's it. That's Super Bowl story of the week right there.
Yeah.
Incredible. Wow. I guess that kind of came up because I'm a big fan of Jason Bell and Ozzy Omaniora, and indeed Mike Carlson when he was with them.
They're a great trio, all right. The coverage is great.
But even during the season, I'd watch the Tuesday night NFL This Week show every week just to keep it tipping along. And they have that healthy balance between giving you enough kind of helpful information that you wouldn't know because you haven't been immersed in this sport all your life without patronising you.
Yeah.
And I do think the BBC's coverage of the NFL is one of the most underrated things in sports coverage. I think it's excellent.
I don't know if this was the first year, but they definitely had the main commentary team doing it. I think previous years it seemed like it was some kind of world feed that they were getting, but that was like added bonus. Because I wanted to see what Al Michaels was saying and what Chris Collinsworth was saying, because that's what everybody else is watching. Flicking back and forth to the Sky stuff, they had Josh Norman in. That was pretty interesting.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder how many people turned over to the BBC when they saw Josh Norman on.
I'm really interested in Josh Norman. I mean, but they also had the Around the NFL podcast guys. I like them. And Jeff. I love Jeff.
No, Jeff is brilliant. Jeff tweets everybody who follows him.
Oh, does he?
He tweets you in some sort of Hawaiian slang. So I followed him only last year. He tweeted me. He was like, "Hey, Owen, maholo for the follow."
All right.
And you kind of just
tweeted
DM. No, tweets you.
Not sliding into your DMs.
No, he doesn't slide into my DMs with Hawaiian kind of words. But he says maholo, and then you say maholo back, and it's all very amusing.
There you go. So I always, like, around half time in the Super Bowl, I always feel this kind of intense sense of sadness that it's now, what are we, 7 months away from the next game, the next meaningful game of NFL?
Yeah, I know you can't logistically do it because of the draft, but it would be great if you had at least college football, and more of us would probably watch college football if it was on a different season.
Just started now.
Yeah, and obviously they're the greatest games in terms of atmosphere, in terms of partisan fans. Although last night was an exception for a Super Bowl. Really, you didn't really get it through the television, but by all accounts from the BBC that it was like a Philly stadium last night. Despite the fact that Patriots were the designated home team, I think.
Well, as Bill Simmons said, I think anybody who is a Patriots fan who is going to go to a Super Bowl has had plenty of opportunity over the last 15 years. So everybody's like, yeah, watch it on TV.
Yeah, it's you would definitely go if you were a Phillies fan, even at cost. If you had thousands of dollars to spend, it is kind of like the version of your trip around the world, holiday of a lifetime, to see your team win their first ever Super Bowl. You've been looking at a lot of fans this morning from Philadelphia. They're an interesting bunch, those Philadelphia fans.
They are absolutely crazy. Yeah, you should spend the rest of your day, just Google Broad Street or put it in search on Twitter, search videos, and you'll be highly amused. I've just seen a Philly fan eating horseshit for money and celebrating the fact that he bent down, put the horse poo in his mouth, and then showed his face to the camera, smiling like this was a very normal way to celebrate.
But I can't really top that, to be honest. I've watched videos of people jumping off cars and stuff, but nothing on that level.
Owen said this is what it'll be like if Mayo win.
If Mayo wins, Sam, I'm not saying that they're going to be eating horse dung, but it'll be similarly in your face, I'd imagine.
All right. It's been a busy weekend. We haven't done any justice to what happened in the football or the hurling. We'll do that on tomorrow's show. We barely scratched the surface of what the 2-2 draw between Liverpool and Spurs actually means in terms of the Champions League, and what it means for Jurgen Klopp and his defensive style, and why they couldn't see it out, and also what it means for Spurs' togetherness and the big couple of weeks they have with the Champions League. And of course their replay against Newport coming up at Wembley. So there is plenty for us to get our teeth into over the course of the week. If you've missed any of it, don't worry, you can get it all on podcast. Just search Off the Ball AM on whatever podcast network you get your podcasts, and we will be right there for you. Brian and Jessica was on earlier. We'll put that up as a full interview on youtube.com/Off the Ball. I don't know, anything else you want to talk about?
Not really, we covered a lot. without covering everything. It was the first bumper weekend of Irish sport, or of sport in general, really, and it delivered big style.
I think it could possibly be the greatest weekend of the year. I don't know if we win the Grand Slam on Paddy's weekend, that's like obviously a pretty big weekend.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Say we kill England and there's no drama to it. Like, how are you going to top the drama?
I think killing England would be absolutely beautiful.
Oh, it'd be beautiful, but it'd be like clinical and, you know.
Well, that's what we expect from Johnny Sexton. Cold, calculated, ice in his veins. There's no question about that after the weekend. But any weekend where that sort of draw, that Liverpool to Spurs to, that if there's any weekend, any other weekend in the year that happens, it's like top billing, except for this weekend.
Right. We'll leave it there, and thanks very much for being part of the show today. We'll see you bright and early tomorrow on the show, on the radio tonight. Obviously, massive response and reaction to everything that happened over the course of the weekend. They got the full 3 hours to tease out everything in the GAA, the rugby, and of course on the football show as well.
Absolutely.
All right, good stuff.